CB, get it right myself first, DCs is the title of this topic, and miss them at your peril is the key. So let's put a little title there. Miss them and make a mistake at your peril, because they're actually really important. Anyway, what does it stand for? What does CBDC stand for? We're terrible in this sector, aren't we? It stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. Yeah, central bank digital currency. So if I put a little C in there, it will probably make more sense for you. And well, what are they? And where's the market for this kind of stuff? Well, you probably, of course, heard of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, as they call them. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have been in the press a lot recently. A lot of people making a lot of money, a lot of people losing a lot of money. They're not investments, they're pure gambles. They're using up a ton of electricity in the mining side of things, and they're running like a blockchain, and they're not owned by anybody, which is why money launderers seem to love them. Actually, ransomware companies seem to love them too, because when they put these companies on ransom, these firms, they always ask for bitcoins. It just kind of knocks it. Anyway, put those aside because they're not really that important. I don't think they'll be around for much longer because of the eco side of things, because they actually burn up more electricity apparently than Belgium does. But that's another issue, isn't it? So what's a central bank digital currency? Well, quite simply, it's a digital currency owned by the Bank of England, central banks. So let's talk about UK here. Bank of England, good old Bank of England, owns these things called CBDCs or government coins, as I think we prefer to call it, GovCoins. I read about that at the weekend. GovCoins. It's a better name than CBDCs. But actually, if you think about it logically, they're quite clever, because these government coins are digital currency. They'll be pegged to sterling. That's the key thing about them. They're not like down to the qualms of supply and demand and mining and blockchains. They're pegged to sterling. And that's really important, because sterling is something the government control and need to look after. So they're not like left loose. So they're pegged to sterling. And around the world, they're pegged to the various other currencies that the governments are using. Some of them maybe even peg them to gold as well, if that's the way they roll, if they haven't got a very good currency. And that's the point is that they are safe, they are secure, they are legal tender. That's the other thing as well. These government coins will be legal tender, just like the banknote in your pocket. The banknote in your pocket says, the Bank of England promises to pay the bearer the sum of £1 or whatever it is, or £50 if you're rich. And that's the thing, because all the other stuff isn't legal tender. The Facebook's new one called DM. Have you heard of that one? They had another one called Libra. Now they're calling it DM. What are they up to? Some Latin alphabet. And they're not pegging it at the moment to anything. So it's a private digital currency, which, okay, Facebook's a big firm, but it's not really the bank. It's not like the government. So this is where it starts to change things, because it's legal currency. You hold GovCoins, or whatever they want to call them, in a central bank account at the Bank of England, and your money is guaranteed. You see, if you put your money in the bank, I've banked with HSBC for years. If I put my money in with HSBC, it's not legal tender. People think it is, it's not, because you're giving the money to the bank and they can do what they like with it, obviously subject to capital controls, etc. They'll lend it out. But the money I've got in my bank account is not legal tender. It's not guaranteed by anybody. The only guarantee I've got is the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. What's that, 85 grand per person, something like that. And that makes you think about the legitimacy of all of this, because we all use banks, don't we, to deposit our money. They charge us an arm and a leg for this, because they're not making profits by cross-selling anymore, because they can't do that. So their charges are starting to go up now. They charge for overdrafts and stuff like that, which obviously it's their business to do that. But your money is not really yours, it's not legal tender. So why not move our money over to the government central bank? The Bank of England will hold all of our money. Let's face it, the Bank of England are the people that provide the money to lend anyway. They give cheap money to banks who then lend it on. Yes, they securitise stuff and they get money from wholesale markets, etc. But the vast majority of money since the financial crash that's been used by banks to lend has been government money, cheap stuff too. So why can't the Bank of England just lend money direct? I mean, that's the way it's going, isn't it? It just makes you think about that. The Bank of England can provide the same service as the banks, but a whole lot cheaper. And the great news is, of course, that the Bank of England is controlled by the government, so they've got total control over it, which is great. And there's one little thing called money laundering, because if everybody starts transacting in GovCoins, then money laundering ain't going to be a problem moving forward. Unless, of course, you want to deal in cryptocurrency like Bitcoins, but that's up to you. Joke apart, you might think it's a bit far-fetched, but that's the way economies are going. We don't have cash in our pockets anymore. I mean, I've had 20 quid in my wallet for about 2 years now, which I took out before lockdown. I don't spend cash, nobody does. And having money on digital, having a digital sort of government coin in sterling that's backed by Bank of England and I can just use to pay for stuff, just makes total sense. And they won't charge me so much. That's just the way it's going to be. It's another nail in the coffin of the banks. The banks need to find their role to play. I said to you, many of them are looking at different angles now to try and make some profits for the future. Interesting times for banks. Anyway, enough of that. Hope that's been useful. Bye.